Welcome to New Breakpoint, Microsoft's digital event series designed for developers by developers. I'm your host, Michelle Sandford, and I'm the Developer Engagement Lead for Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. We broadcast on the second Thursday of every month, and if you join us live, my guests and I will answer your questions live in chat. As you might know, New Breakpoint has expanded across Asia Pacific, bringing you conversations with developer experts from across the region. Today, I am joined again by my friend Aaron Powell, who is in Sydney. Aaron is a principal cloud advocate, and today we're taking a closer look at something fresh out of Microsoft Build, the GitHub Copilot app, and what it means for developers building experiences powered by Copilot. Hi Aaron, great to have you back on the show. Before we jump in, for those who haven't met you yet, can you give us a quick intro to yourself and what you do as a principal cloud advocate?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me back, Michelle, and to all the people out there watching New Breakpoint today. As mentioned, my name is Aaron, and I'm part of the Core AI developer relations team at Microsoft, which means that I work a bit with GitHub, a bit with Microsoft technologies and things like that. I'm a .NET developer by trade. I've been doing that for about 20 years now, but I've been doing more and more with GitHub Copilot, particularly looking at how we can leverage that as a .NET developer and the kind of workflows that sort of fits into there. But probably the main thing I'm doing at the moment is I manage a GitHub repo called Awesome Copilot, which is, I think we're coming up to 700 custom agents, skills, plugins, and things like that to make sure that you can get the most out of working with GitHub Copilot. And that's why I'm kind of excited to be here talking about the new GitHub Copilot app.
Love Awesome Copilot. Every single talk that I do and every conference I go to, I add Awesome Copilot to the resources list because it is so awesome. But last time you were on, we talked about building agents with Copilot SDK. Where does the GitHub Copilot app fit into that story?
Yeah. So as Michelle mentioned, and you can find that in the backlog of playlist of episodes on New Breakpoint. But we talked about the Copilot SDK. So the idea of that was that you want to build, say, your own custom agentic workflow into your application. You want to have that kind of experience that someone might have working with GitHub Copilot, but tailor-made for the kinds of things that exist in your application. And you don't want to go through all maybe the complexities that can come with building a custom agent, hosting that, scalability, and all the other things that sit around there. Now, what's actually really interesting about the Copilot and the new GitHub Copilot app is that it's actually built on top of the Copilot SDK. But what we've done here is we've just essentially the GitHub Copilot app is I'm just going to call it Copilot app. We know we're talking about GitHub. I know that we have a lot of different Copilots at Microsoft, but I think we'll understand already by the context that we're talking about the GitHub one this time. So the Copilot app is really just another tool in your toolbox when it comes to working with Copilot. We've got things like the VS Code experience where it's in the editor there. We've got the CLI experience if you're more of a CLI person. It's integrated into other IDEs such as Visual Studio. It's in the browser through Copilot, the cloud coding agent, or just through the chat experience in the web browser. So the new Copilot app is, like I said, it's another one in that, just another approach to working with it. In this case, it's a very agent-first experience. So where a lot of applications tend to have agents brought into their existing design paradigm and how you'd work with them, this has been built for working with agents first and foremost, and then you then expand out into other tooling. And we'll kind of see that as we jump into some demos a little bit later on.
So I'm a little bit confused by all of the choices that I have in the world now. I told you last time we spoke that I really like talking to GitHub Copilot on github.com because it's like a terminal window, but it's directly in the cloud. It's not on my machine. And so I'm talking to it up there. And then if I want to go into the code, I would open code spaces from there and then continue talking to it in code spaces. But, it's like, it's another thing. It's another app. It's another place where you might talk to it. What Am I doing? Is it? Am I able to see my code in the app? Is it like using VS Code, or is it more like what I'm doing in the browser, or like what is it comparable to, and why would I pick this one compared to the other ones?
Yeah, well, why don't we bring it up so we can talk about this, I guess, in context, and maybe that helps, people that haven't seen the application yet, they'll understand a bit more rather than we do hand wavy things of trying to explain stuff away. So let me share a screen.
I love how you know that nothing makes sense to me unless I see it.
Yep. Michelle does love her visuals. So let me. We're going to share that, and I'm also going to share it with sound, just because we might have a bit of fun later on with the sound side of things. So this is the Copilot app that I've got open here. I've just got it open. I've just landed on the home screen. So you can think of this as very much your entry point into your day's work. So I come here. I've got I've got a chat session that I can start off. I can choose contextually how I want that to work with, and I'll kind of explain a bit more about that as we dive into how you run what we'll refer to as sessions inside of the Copilot app. But then below that, we then have kind of the backlog of things that we've been working on, or tasks that I've got upcoming across a variety of repos that I've got open inside of this. And then I can jump into a much more detailed view of this, where I can see this long list of things that I've been working on and stuff like that. I can see that's like a view of everything that's available, things that are currently active that I'm working on, things that I've got reviews and done work that one still needs to load. So we won't jump into that too much. So like I said, it's kind of that entry point, where are you starting your day? That's kind of what you would land inside of this starting point in Copilot app. But the way that I actually tend to use this is to start my day is I want to run, I want to do a kind of a triage of what's happened with Awesome Copilot over the previous 24 hours, because where we get a lot of pull requests that come in, we get a lot of issues of people submitting new plugins and stuff like that. So I want to start my day with a summary, because generally speaking, that happens on European and US time, which means that I end up with a huge amount of stuff there. So I could open up github.com, I could go to the issue list, I can go to the pull requests, and I can do that kind of filtering there. But something that we've built into the Copilot app is this idea of automations. Things you want to run on a schedule and just have it have performed by an agentic workflow. And I actually have one here that I run daily, which is it does a summary of pull requests that have been submitted to Awesome Copilot, so I can have a look at. I get that kind of presented to me in a format that I want it to be, and in this case, I get it to generate me a Markdown format for it. So this is a list of all the new pull requests that had happened in the previous 24 hours, and I can start with this. I can have a look at it. I can have a look. Okay, so we've got some things here that this one here in fact was some new skills submission. We see the pull request numbers and stuff like that, title, and kind of an initial bit of a summary that I can then jump into that pull request and start reviewing it. Or if I can see ones that are this one down here, for instance, is it's been branched off the wrong branch, and the pull request is targeting the wrong branch. So I know that I've got some that I can immediately park for the moment until the submitter fixes things. Now, an automation it's just a prompt. In this case, it's a prompt that I've written. I've told it how to use the GitHub CLI to perform a query to get back some data, and then eventually I tell it that I want it to format as a Markdown table. I specify what kind of cadence I want to run that on. I want it to run it daily at a particular time. I want it to run it hourly. I want a manual invocation, or whatever the case may be. So there's a variety of different ways we can set these sorts of things up. And we've also got a bunch of templates available for you just to kind of get you started. These are some ideas that might be useful for you when it comes to building out your own automations.
There is an agentic workflow automation that I got off GitHub, a standard one that I found really useful, and I put it on I put it on my active repos. But you've created this one from scratch. This isn't, you haven't taken that. You just thought, I know what I need.
Yeah. It's like, this is the kind of thing where, well, actually, let's go back to the template. So you could have, say, like an issue triage. Say you're the product owner for, or the Scrum Master for a project. So like you have like a daily issue triage where you get kind of that burn down of what's happened over the like yesterday on it, so you can kind of keep track of how the project is running. You can specify, like I said, cadence and all that sort of stuff. You can also create ones that will be run when particular issues when an issue is created, so you can provide some heuristics around that. How you want this to run, so like the context of that. Do you want it to run on, like, which repo do you want it to run against? Do you want to run it as like an autopilot, so it'll just do the work and run through to completion? Do you want it as an interactive session that starts where you can then get asked questions by the agent and then you would respond to? Or do you want it to do a plan? Like a plan might be a good one. Again, I'll use the kind of like a Scrum sort of analogy, that you would have like after the retro has been done for your project, you would then have the plan that is then going out and then starting to build out what would be maybe the next 2-week sprint. Based off of it, but it's going to do it in a plan mode, so it'll be a bit more interactive, back and forth, ask you questions, get feedback that has come out of that sprint retrospective, and then build out that plan to then build your backlog for, like I said, the next sprint.
Yes, this is like a really good thing for if you're a product owner or a product manager. You can be using this. You don't have to be a developer. It's for the wider team.
Exactly, yeah. And we've talked a bit about this. And when I was at Microsoft Build the other week, talking to people on the expo floor about the Copilot app, a lot of what we were hearing as initial feedback from people is that they could see this as being really approachable for the members of their technical team that are not developers. Or less technical members of a team, so like your product owners and people like that. And things like VS Code and the CLI, they're very developer centric, right? They're VS Code, even with the chat experience, it still feels like a developer tool. Whereas this one, because it's been built for working with agents first and foremost, it's a lot more approachable to someone that doesn't have that isn't a developer, but they're wanting to do something. They're involved in a development team or a technical team, so they still have the concept of a repo and a backlog and things like that are what they're working with, but they're not going to be writing the code necessarily, so they can still, like I said, interact across that surface area.
Yeah, and the code's not there right away. When you're in VS Code or when you're in code spaces, it's opening with the code, it's starting with the code. Whereas what you've got here is the to-dos, it's the jobs, it's the issues, it's the work, but without going to the code. And you can go to the code if you click on the PR link, but it's not at all the first thing that's right in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. And because this is Copilot under the hood, like you also get all that other valuable stuff that sits around, like skills and MCP servers. So you still have that kind of deep ecosystem integration that you're wanting, but you don't have to become a developer to be able to get the power of this inside of what you're doing.
Yeah, and everything's natural language.
Yes, exactly. Cool. So let's take a bit of a lap around kind of like how I'm using this in my workflow. So we'll see on the left-hand side, there's this panel here that has a whole bunch of sessions. And as I said, session is the terminology that we refer to when we're talking about how we're working with the agent. So we have sessions that agents are doing on our behalf, or we're interacting with them. And they can be either scoped as to a repository, or they can be just quick chat. So like, let's say there's something that you want to try and learn a bit about, or you've got a problem that you want to try and like figure out some insights into, but it's not really specific to a particular project that you're working on. So you could create a new session for that. So I'll just click on this here and I'll create a new quick chat, and we could say, what are some the features of the Copilot app? So we'll ask it something obviously fairly open-ended and generic, but because this is not scoped to project, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have all that additional context or anything like that available to it. So it's going to go out there and work with the MCP servers, work with other tooling that it might have access to. So it's going to go ahead and do its little thing. And we'll see that in that session view, we have a little icon indicating that session is performing some work. And if we hover over it, we should get a little tooltip that tells us that it's doing work. And looks like my tooltip is not hovering over, but anyway. But yeah, there we go. So like it's time to come back with some information and stuff like that. We've got one down here a little bit further where it's got a green tick against it. So it's indicating that this one has completed some work since I last interacted with it. So it's done something. But I haven't reviewed what it last did. In this case, it was creating a pull request that I have since merged. Again, we got some iconography that's trying to indicate what's happening here. So we've got these gray icons, which is showing that it's like this is an idle session where there was maybe a bit of work that has resulted in not a new pull request, but then I've got another one here that is resulting in a new pull request. Now, another thing,
all of those ones that you've got there are linked to your awesome Copilot repository, whereas all those quick chats above, those are not necessarily linked to any code. They're just independent questions you've asked. But you might have multiple repositories under there if you were working across multiple projects.
Yeah.
Well, Aspire there, like that's linked to the Aspire repo.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see. I as you can see, I've been using this quite a bit recently. So I have a lot of sessions, and I've got it turned on so that it will clean up stale sessions after a period of time. I forget exactly what the cadence that it does, but it will clean them up. But something you said earlier of like, why would I use this as a workflow as opposed to, say, speeding up a new code space to continue that session on that I was working inside of, like the browser-based chat with Copilot? One of the reasons that you might want to use this as opposed to any of our other Copilot experiences is that every time you start a session on a repo, and let's just create a new session here on Awesome Copilot, just so I could show kind of where these options are, is that by default, it's going to suggest that you want to start a session with a new work tree. Now, this is a Git concept. So Git work trees it's a feature of Git that essentially allows you to create a local fork, I guess, is probably as good a description as I can give of it, but of that repository. So then the upstream of that becomes just the initial clone of the repository you did on your machine, which then has the upstream of the remote source on github.com. And by creating a new work tree, everything is then happening inside of a new folder. So if you run multiple concurrent agent sessions, they're all working in isolation of each other. And this is kind of opposite to where, say, we're working with Copilot inside of VS Code or inside of a code space. And if you want to run, say, a couple of different concurrent agent sessions, what happens if you've got multiple agents that want to work on the same file? Well, you run the risk of them having a collision, and, well, which agent wins in that file write to disk? Well, it's a little opaque of which one's going to make that final file write. Whereas having these work trees means that if two different agents want to touch the same file, that's okay, because they're working on their own isolated copy of those files. Obviously, it does mean that maybe from an application architecture, you have a potential risk of you're binding to the same HTTP port, or if you're using a shared database instead of like a containerized database, there's still potential for conflicts on a local machine. But at the very least, we're giving you some of the building blocks to make applications be able to be co-hosted on the same machine and concurrently worked on by multiple sessions at the same time without colliding, at least from a file perspective.
But so that's just the same, I guess, as with multiple teammates working on the same problem or on multiple problems. Yeah. But we're just really letting the agents have their own laptop in effect.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a great analogy, right? If and we had people were initially asking us when we were talking about the Git work trees was the approach that we were going to be that we recommended people use with this. It's like, well, how do you deal with merge conflicts? My answer is the same. The same way you deal with merge conflicts when they come into like as a pull request. You've got two developers on two separate machines are both working and touch the same file, and you have a merge conflict there. Well, it just so happens that maybe you've got multiple agents, I was going to say multiple virtual developers working concurrently, and each of them is going to send up their own independent pull request because the work trees become branches when they get sent to GitHub. So you would still have the potential for a merge conflict, but that merge conflict is now happening through the pull request process, which is where you would naturally deal with them rather than two things fighting in the same clone of the repo on your machine, and you're trying to work out, well, I want to grab this file and this file and this file, but not these other files in between, or like hunks out of like some files but not others. Yeah, it just means you're able to work in parallel a lot more efficiently.
I don't have a problem with merge conflicts anymore because I ask GitHub Copilot, how do I resolve those merge conflicts? And it knows better than me, it seems.
Yep. So let's actually kick off a session and kind of like see how this works. And so let's grab I'm going to grab an application that I was working on earlier. And I'm going to copy an error message. I've got a test failing inside of the Aspire Community Toolkit, and we're going to come over here, and I'm going to start a new session, and we'll come down here to Aspire. Now, when I create a new session, I can just click, bang, I want to create a new session, and that'll just create a new session where I'm going to start from a particular branch and so on and so forth. But this is actually from a pull request that someone else is contributing up to our to the Aspire Community Toolkit, and I want to try and help them because there's a failing test inside of that pull request. So I realized I just did something but didn't kind of explain what I was doing. So this time when I click the create from instead of just the new session option, I can choose to initially contextualize that pull request, or sorry, this session with something. Maybe I want a particular branch. Maybe there's a regression in release, so I want to start with the release branch, and that's where it's going to be contextualized, and we'll start the work tree from there. Or I could choose pull requests. And maybe I want to pick up a pull request that one of my team members has started off on, and I'm going to then continue on their work or do that, right? A bit of a review locally with Copilot and as a in it. Or I can start from an issue. Again, I've been assigned some issues in the backlog. I'm going to start a session based off of this issue, and we're going to run with it. In this case, I'm going to pick the log2 branch, log2 pull request that's been contributed to us, and I'm going to say failing test. Here's the output. Let's see if we can figure out what's wrong.
Seems I'm just quite wordy when you're talking to an agent these days.
Fix, bam, paste down. I'm probably burning a whole bunch of excessive tokens by typing out something like that.
By being so polite.
Yeah. When the machine uprising comes along, I want them to know that I was polite to them. So we'll kick that session off, and it's going to take a while, but let's just see some of the things that have been added into the UI. I'm just going to collapse the sidebar a bit while we talk about this, that help us kind of, I guess, understand a bit about what the session knows about. In this case, we can see here that this is the pull request that it was opened from. We can see the pull request and the number, and I can open that up in the browser if I want. We can see this, here's a bunch of the file changes. It's giving me that summary. So this is just adding 1,700 new lines of code to the repo. So that's contextually what this pull request is doing. And then on the right-hand side, we can maximize this out. And this is that view of, here are all the files. I can expand out the folder view. So these are all the files that were inside of that pull request. So I can come and have a look through them, and I can navigate through the files and stuff like that. I can even come to, let's grab which files do I want? No, further down. Yeah, here we go. Let's say that this file here, for example, this file is actually an auto-generated file, so it doesn't need to be contributed as part of the pull request. So what I could do is I could actually click here, and now what I would be doing is I say this file doesn't need to be added. It's generated. Delete. So I've selected a sections file, or I could like drag, select, and select multiple sections of the file. And now when I hit send, what that's going to do is it is actually going to add this as more context into what's happening with inside of this session. So it's added that that new line here. It says it's an inline code review has happened, and that is what's there, and it's now got that queued message. I could click onto that. I'm actually going to let's see. I'm trying to remember how to delete it, but no. We'll leave that in the queue, and eventually Copilot will kind of figure out. But that's how, like, if we're doing kind of like a pull request review, we can put those inline comments, and actually the agent that we're doing the review with will get that sent across to it immediately, which is, I think, kind of a nifty value add when working with it. Obviously, we can view the pull request as well in line. We can add new comments and things like that. We can drop into a terminal. Whoops. So we can drop to the terminal view. Oops. Don't want to drag that out of its location. I just want the terminal. We can also use the okay, fine. Pop to the side. Nope. We might have a bug there where it thinks I'm trying to drag around. But we could also open up other things. So like we could open up a browser. So if we were building, say, a web application, I could open up a browser here. We could have the dev site visible, and we could navigate around inside of that. And then, yeah. Yeah, still thinks I'm selecting on something, but I'm not. So we'll navigate away, and we'll come back up to, say, another one that's up here. No, I'm not going to drop the terminal.
I do really like the fact that you can sort of add comments, add tasks as it's already started. In the beginning, all of those agents, once you sent them off on a task, you couldn't really interrupt them, and you couldn't give them extra stuff while they were working. That your only choices were stop what you're doing and listen to this, or continue, wait to the end, and then go back and iterate on what you've done based on this new knowledge. And you'd see, when they were thinking out loud, you'd see what they were doing, and if they were going down a rabbit hole, that was sometimes I just want to tell them, no, not that, this, and there's no way to get in there. But now you can absolutely add those comments as they work, and it will pick those up and work on those at the same time as what it's already working on, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. And that just means that we're able to do like back and forth communication between this panel here on the right hand side and the agent session that we're working with. So like it's got that really nice tight contextual integration in there. And another thing that we can do is this inside of this chat session here that I've got. We'll see there's all these little markers in the sidebar, and this is actually where I can go back to point in that session that I had with Copilot. So let's say I want to jump back to here and be like, okay, well, this was something that I steered the agent to do, and then what did it do after doing that kind of stuff? Okay, and then we can jump back to what was the conclusion of our back and forth interactions.
Love that.
Now, another thing, so like we can obviously see all the code that's here, and like I can, and this one here, I'm looking at a particular GitHub action, and I can navigate, so I can look at all of this, but I still find this a little bit of maybe a clunky reading experience, because, well, I'm only seeing kind of that file diff view. Let's say that this is creating a new file, but let's just assume that I was looking at something that was editing an existing file. Well, that file diff view might be hiding a bunch of additional context around it and stuff like that. So if I want to take this session over to my editor, well, I can do that. up in the top corner here, we've got this open option. It's going to select it's going to show the last one that you opened into. I use VS Code Insiders as my primary editor, so it defaults to that because that's what I last opened into. But it will give us a bunch of different options that we could open into. So I could open into just vanilla VS Code. I could open a new terminal session in my Windows Terminal application, or I could you can see that it's aware of other editors that I've got installed. So I've got JetBrains Writer in there as for a .NET experience. Also have a variety of Visual Studios. I can jump into those as well. But let's just open up our VS Code Insiders instance. I'm going to bring that back into the screen share. Now, what we'll see with this is that, well, it's got all of the files and all the code that I expect to have inside of this repo. It's all there. This is just VS Code as I would be expecting it. But if I want to pick up that session that we were working with in Copilot App, well, I can do that here. So here is that session, PR risk scanning. I have that visible here, and then I could say, let's just open that in the editor. And then this session here, and then I'll see that session there. At least eventually that'll pop in. VS Code is still loading. But we'll leave that to kind of run and play in the background. Now we're in full VS Code. We have all of our plugins and all that kind of stuff. So we can go into that more hands-on developer side of things. I want to run the application. I want to modify some of the code directly rather than relying on an agent to do all of it and so on and so forth. This is then inside of our work tree. So it's still loading up all of my various extensions. But we'll see that this is like the folder location of this is where I've checked out that work tree to. More accurately, where Copilot App has checked out that work tree to, rather than the main clone of the repo that will eventually load up. We'll see that I'm taxing my machine as we speak.
I can see it's thinking.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. I got that chat session. That session did finally load in. Excellent. Look at that. Proved my demo correct. All right. Let's come back into Copilot App, because that's really what we're doing. We've seen plenty of VS Code and things like that in the past. So what are other things that we can do with inside of here? Let's start a new session, because this is just running Copilot. We've got skills, so I can do / and I can access a whole bunch of skills that I've got installed through plugins or things like that. So if you've got them with inside of your repo, those skills will be available. If you've got them installed globally for your user, again, they'll also be available. There's a bunch of default skills that get installed, things like building with Word documents and some of the stuff like that. But another thing that we've added is what we're calling Canvas. So let me start creating a canvas, and then we'll talk about what it does. So I'm going to say I want a canvas that shows a summary of the pull requests that were against the main branch or that were branched from main. Okay, so I'm going to ask it to create me a canvas that is going to give me like a view of my active pull requests, but filtering out a couple of different, so a couple of pull requests, a couple of labels that I've got on them. With the way that you contribute to Awesome Copilot, you need to target a particular branch. It's called staged, not the main branch, because we then have some automations that run after we merge into staged. Also, if you then branch from the main branch, it breaks the repo because of the automations that get run that would bring a whole bunch of stuff that we don't want brought across. So we have some labels that go onto pull requests that have been incorrectly branched or incorrectly targeted in their pull request. But every time I do that, I have to then go to the website. I have to do -label : branch main -label : targets main, so that I can actually filter out the pull requests and view things more accurately. But I'd love to be able to just do that with inside of the Copilot app, just see what's happening there. So I can create a canvas to do that. So a canvas is going to appear in that right panel that we have on the side. So this section here on the side, and let's just close that for a minute. So where I've got kind of this diff view, the pull request view, they are kind of canvases in and of themselves. They're obviously very specific canvases around showing diffs and showing pull requests and things like that. But I can build whatever I want to go in there. It's a web application that gets hosted, but it's then also integrated with the Copilot SDK so that the Copilot session you've got running can talk to it. And vice versa. So you have this bidirectional communication. So this panel is not just I'm hosting a random website with inside of my Copilot application. I'm hosting something that is contextually relevant to the session that I'm doing, and then I can interact back and forth with them. That's going to take a little bit of time to build out. We'll see if it gets done before we run out of time today. But I'll show another canvas that I've done that is arguably less practical, but no less fun. So let's just load up a session that I did the other day of building out a canvas, and this is, well, I need something to do while the agents are working. I've set off my fleet of agents. They're all working on their parallel work streams in their own workspaces. So what am I going to do to keep myself occupied? Well, maybe I want to run. Maybe I want to play a game. I'm going to play Snake. So hopefully once this session resumes, it's going to start my little Snake application. But you can see it is running a website there on the side. It's just it so happens to be running a website there that isn't actually loaded. While it's loading, let's have a look at what files there's added. So a canvas lives in the .github/extension/name of canvas, in this case Snake Game, and then it's just a JavaScript file, extension.mjs. In this case, I'm just doing inline HTML rendering, but you could have that running, loading a HTML file from elsewhere. This could then talk out to external services. So a common question we get asked is, can I use this with Azure DevOps? Natively, no, because this is the GitHub Copilot application, so it talks to GitHub. It knows how to talk to issues and pull requests there. But there's no reason why you couldn't build a canvas that uses the Azure DevOps API to then talk to Azure DevOps, which I think would be kind of a nifty way to go about it. Let's see if we can get our Snake Game to launch. No, let's go and see if we can get it start up again, so we can show what a canvas looks like. There we go. Ta-da! We've got a little web application here, and I'm going to what's it? We're using WASD on this one. Well, and I'm not very good at it. There we go. So now while our agents are running, I have something that is just custom built inside of this side panel here. Obviously, there's nothing kind of bidirectionally communication-wise that you would want, maybe from Snake, other than maybe have it track your how you're doing with the game and push that into like a leaderboard that you're storing with inside of your Git repo. Yes. Anyway, that's an example of the kind of things that you could build with a canvas. It's a bunch of JavaScript. We have a skill, which is that /create canvas. You then just tell it what you want your canvas to do, and the agent will go ahead and build this all out. That's what happened here. Like, I didn't actually write this code. The canvas itself was just fully created by Copilot.
Interestingly, I did ask the app what is a canvas, and it didn't know what a canvas was until I showed it. And then it was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, normally I always ask GitHub Copilot everything. So all the questions that I get from people that are about GitHub Copilot, I ask GitHub Copilot itself, because I think surely it knows best about itself. But I guess sometimes even it can get confused.
Exactly. Well, I mean, a lot of this stuff is so new. The knowledge just hasn't been built into the or hasn't been trained into any of the models yet. But that's for us to run sessions like this so that people can learn about them and be that information that's being fed into the next iteration of models that are being trained.
That's a really good point, actually. When you're asking an agent something, then it is often just relying on its model training, and unless you've got some sort of up-to-date plugin. So like when we were looking at the build stuff, there was a build plugin that we were using, which would then cause it to go directly to the build site and the build information and bring back the current, most recent information, which the model hasn't been trained on, but it's reaching out using those tools. And that's another thing that you're Awesome Copilot is pretty useful for, huh? Getting those skills, getting those tools, getting those hooks, putting all of those things in, so you don't have to do it from scratch. You can go there and get the best practice recommendations from the community and add those things in.
Yeah, and to that point, like we're trying to build out the documentation around the Copilot app at the moment. It's been out for the grand total of about 2 weeks, at least at the time of recording. Obviously, it'll be a bit longer when this episode does get published. But we recently added to the Awesome Copilot website. So if anyone hasn't seen the Awesome Copilot website, it's awesome-copilot.github.com, and that's where we have all these skills and agents and things like that. I will also have this learning hub, so it's kind of a knowledge base where we're trying to document out best practices and good insights. I don't know if I shared audio properly, but the ICQ uh-oh just played.
We heard a little clown horn.
It was the ICQ uh-oh. I'm old enough to have that just like triggered in the back of my mind. So I customized my Copilot app to have some particular sounds play when a session needs my input. So in this case, we can actually see that there is an answer required on this backlog canvas, or when a session is done. So let's come into here and see what's it want. Okay, so it wants to know like this canvas extension that we're building. Where do I want it to be? Do I want it part of the repository, or do I want it globally on my machine? In this case, I want it in part of this repository because it's only really relevant to Awesome Copilot. So we'll leave that run. It's going to be operating in the background, and we might hear ICQ pop in again.
I have been hearing some little beeps and toots and things like that, and I was wondering what those are. So those are all noises that you have added. Yep. I definitely want that now.
Yes. Well, you gotta have a bit of fun with it, right? Like you can't just have the boring like system dings and things like that. You gotta give your agent a little bit of personality.
And this is great because I was looking for a Microsoft Learn path for the GitHub Copilot app the other day, and I couldn't find one. But this is what I'm looking for, right? You have started this in here in the Awesome Copilot site.
Yep.
And yes, that's perfect.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect.
So we've just started documenting out like kind of the high level information around what it is. So what is Copilot app? We talk about some of the features like the My Work automations. Like why you might want to use it. Work trees is for me, I think, is one of the big thing. Talk a bit about canvases, and then some common workflows that it might be ideal for, as opposed to using other things like VS Code or CLI or whatever the case may be. So yeah, over the coming weeks, we'll hopefully fill this out with a bit more content. So maybe by the time you're watching this, because we're recording it a couple of weeks in advance, there might be more than just this one page on getting started. But maybe we'll have some expanded guides around things like the automations and canvases and so on and so forth.
How to add the noises.
Exactly. Yeah. I can show that one off. That one is inside of settings, and then down the bottom of settings, you can choose the noises that you want. So I've got my ICQ, so that's when it needs input, and then because I'm definitely a bit of a nerd for when this is completed. Job's done. And the astute observer on this recording will probably notice what that is from. But for those of you that are maybe not as old as myself, that's from Warcraft 2, the little peons that you would send off to do tasks. So when they completed them, job's done.
That's so cute. That was definitely making things fun. Although I would imagine if you're sitting in a workplace, other people around you would get annoyed.
Yep. Yes,
I can quite see Ben doing that. We have a guy in our workplace who loves stuff like that, and I can quite see him sitting there doing that, and all the others around him being like, "Where's that coming from?" That's very cool. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for the The instructions, yes. So I can work my way through and make sure that I understand all of those things clearly.
Yeah. Well, so we're probably coming up towards time. So probably the burning question, everyone, is like, how do you get it? Well, github.com/github/app. So that's where you'll find the latest release of it. So you can download and install. It's part of the Copilot license. So as long as you've got a GitHub Copilot license, there's no additional licensing or cost to using this app, because, like I said, it's just another experience to working with GitHub Copilot.
Yes. Do you use this on your phone? Like, I use the GitHub mobile one on my phone. Do you use this on your phone as well, or do you always use this on your desktop?
That's actually a good question. So Michelle's referring to is where you're able to use the GitHub mobile application, and it has agents in there, and you can run agent sessions and stuff like that. Let's just spin up another session. When we're choosing to run a new session, so we've got new work tree, so spin out its own work tree. We can run it in the local repository, so that initial clone that you've done, or you can run it as a cloud agent. So this is delegated to Copilot Coding Agent, which is the one that runs through the browser and that you can interact with on the through a mobile device. So if you just want to tell us to do something and have that run in the cloud, then yeah, you can definitely do that. Just selecting cloud here. You can also have sessions start as remote sessions, so you can have that session running on your machine, but by enabling remote, and I think you can do that at the repository level as well. Yes, so you can enable remote control. So sessions that get created have remote access. So while it might be operating on your machine with, say, a work tree that's running on your machine, as long as your machine is on and has an internet connection, you'll be able to then access it, that same session via GitHub Mobile. And then you could also do additional steering. So let's say that you've kicked off a session. It's going to take a little bit of time, and you want to then, while it's running, you want to take your dog for a walk. Well, you enable that as a remote session, and then if something comes up that you want to then re-steer, you can check that on the GitHub app, give it some additional instructions, and that session will keep running on your machine. You can, if it runs, you can have it run tests and that kind of stuff as well. So all that happening on your machine, but you then have the ability to control it via the mobile app as well.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. When I was in Canberra the other week, I decided in my hotel room before I went to the office for the day to do an event that actually I wanted to, instead of handing out slides, just give them a website. And so I kicked it off building that website for me whilst I was in the hotel. And then by the time I got to the office, it was all done. But on the way, I was, I had the app open and I could check it and change things and, talk to the agent through the app on the way. So the things that were, I've forgotten the resources page, something like that. Can you add a resources page? Or for your awesome Copilot, sometimes it might, well, it wasn't awesome Copilot, actually, it was GitApe. I don't know whether you've had a chance to see that, but Arnaud Leroux was on showing that off this month. For that one, where it had put a link into the resources, it put the internal Microsoft link, not the public facing link. And so I saw that in the app while I was walking over there and said, change it to this link. And everything was perfect by the time I got to the office. So yeah, cloud agents and being able to control them from your mobile app is just like a game changer, I think. And yeah, if you were flying somewhere like we will often do, to be able to kick something off before you fly and then fly and maybe just give it a little guidance if you've got a bit of Wi-Fi in the cloud on the way, that's tremendous. Yeah, really, really, really freeing, I guess. So you don't ever have that pressure of thinking, oh my goodness, this massive 5-hour gap while I fly somewhere and I can't get anything done.
Yep.
Cool. Well, definitely it does feel like we've already shown them a lot today, and it's really exciting to see how much you can get done now using Copilot powered experiences. So it definitely feels like we're lowering the barrier for developers to go from idea to something real much, much faster. We will link all of the resources from today's episode in our show notes. So the awesome Copilot that we've talked about, that Learning Hub, obviously the link to this app, and anything else that Aaron and I can think of. We're going to stick around and be answering questions live in chat for the next 10 minutes or so. So if there's something you haven't already asked us and you want Aaron to answer, not too late, put that in now. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Aaron. And we'll see you all next month on New Breakpoint.
Thanks for having me. See you, folks.
We hope you enjoyed this digital event. We have specialists on standby to answer your questions for a short while. To ask a question, type it into the chat window now and we'll get to it as quickly as we can. If you're not staying for the Q&A, thank you for attending and we hope to see you again soon.